Infra, we are in a conversation with Mr. Subodh Jain. Now, Mr. Jain is a veteran of the Indian Railway Service with nearly 40 years of experience. He served as member engineering at Indian Railway Board as well as general manager, Central Railway, Mumbai. In today's conversation, we will touch upon various aspects of Indian Railways, such as modernization of the sector, passenger train services, the challenges and the opportunities ahead for the Indian railway sector. So, thanks for joining us out here at AT Infra. My first question to you would be around, you have decades of experience in the Indian railways. From your own sort of vantage point of view, from a bird's eye point of view, how when you started your career in the Indian railways and to the current year, how it has evolved.
When we started our career in the railways, it was a very rudimentary kind of a system. Although we were at that point also world's third largest railway system under a single management, but it was quite rudimentary, and we did not modernize. And the first thrust of modernization came I joined in 76.
Right.
So we had the steam locomotives also at that time, and a few electric locomotives, and most of the time diesel locomotives, fish-plated track, and all kinds of rudimentary signaling system and thing. Then during 80s, a lot of modernization thrust came. We got into the modern locomotives, the coach is improved, and the speed barrier of 90 kilometers. Transportation is all about the speed and the capacity.
Okay.
So, and of course the network, but there were shortage of the funds. Network expansion was not much. But during 80s, we saw the modernization. We saw the speeds crossing the 100 kmph limit. The Rajdhanis were upgraded to 120 and 130, but there were only one or two trains which could operate at 130. Rest were at 110. And then came the major decision in 1992 when we did the gauge conversion. Prior to that, we had 40,000 kilometers of the meter gauge network and 60,000 kilometers of the broad gauge network. So this 40,000 kilometers of the meter gauge on an program basis, we converted in the broad gauge. That was the major network expansion which took place during my service career. Today, whatever we see, the traffic, Jaipur, Bangalore, entire South India and the Western India, it has become possible only because of the gauge conversion. The northeast part of this thing, then Assam. So that connectivity, the impact of the gauge conversion was far beyond what we had anticipated as a planner. We never thought that it will make so much of a difference. So gauge conversion was towards the network expansion side. Towards the technological side, we increased our speeds from say 90 kmph kind of speed which was prevailing at the time to 160 kilometers per hour now. Of course, 160 kilometers is in one or two patches. Rest all, we are still hovering around 130, 125 for the Vande Bharat, and much lower speeds for other than Vande Bharat trains. In the recent times, the major technological development has been the distributed power rolling stock, which we popularly call Vande Bharat. We had a distributed power only in the suburban systems, like Mumbai Suburban, and then this came in the metros. Metro also had the distributed power. But in the mainline railways, we did not dare to go for distributed power. Primarily because it's a high-tech area, and we thought that if the train goes out in the wilderness and something happens, so we will not, do we repair? In case of a loco-driven train, we detach the locomotive and send another locomotive. Now, if this kind of train gets marooned in this thing, So that way, I really feel elated. Of course, it came after I retired from the railways, but the Vande Bharat has been an experiment which was indigenous, and still it uh, it worked glitch free. There was no glitches. There were no major problems, except some minor hiccups here and there. So Vande Bharat is an experiment which will percolate down to the passenger trains and which will change the face of the passenger train operation on the Indian Railways, hopefully. Second thing has been the network expansion. The last 10 years, huge amount of money has been invested. Say, uh, investment has been more than 10 lakh crores, if we see in the infrastructure,
Right.
be it a wagon or rolling stock or new lines. Although it has not resulted in the commensurate uh, benefit in terms of bringing down the unit cost of transportation and improvement in speed, because commercially, for to be competitive for a transport organization, you have to be fast.
Right.
The point to point transit time has to be come down, and you have to be cost effective. Say today, uh, people drive down to Jaipur, even Jodhpur also people drive down because they find it far more convenient, although it is much cumbersome as compared to train journey and this thing. But time has become important. So that is what is my small this thing, whatever I have to say on this technology. And if you have anything specific, we
Yes.
can discuss that.
Yes, sir. Sir, you touched upon the unit economics. I think that's always a major challenge for the railways to ensure that it's also financially viable. At the same time, it's provide the required services to the huge masses of the country. Now, currently with the railways, like you mentioned about the short distances, Jaipur and the others, the railways also have to now compete with the aviation sector, wherein the likes of the Udan scheme when fares are relatively low, and those other schemes are coming in. So in such a sort of competitive environment, how do you think, these issues of, pricing, ensuring the unit economics are viable, thus one can sort of, address them?
You see, first of all, uh, railways have been a government system and they live with that legacy
Yeah.
that say my life is comfortable, whether money is coming in or not coming in. So today, if aviation sector is able to compete, it is because of the reforms which have been implemented there. You have unbundled the sector.
Yeah.
The airports are operated by someone, aircrafts are something, and ticketing is this. So, and there is a regulator. So there is a competitive efficiency. Prior to that, what was the aviation? So the reforms have gone into the power sector. Now you see, initially when we talked of the power sector reforms and privatization, people said ki private sector will fleece and the cost of power will go and this thing. Initially, yes, cost of power went up, but today at least you have the power. I know those days when we were having generator and inverter and all kinds of things and still sorting it out. So the thing is, railway today, there is no economical focus. I made a train, Vande Bharat, which has a capacity of 200 kilometers per hour. I am operating it at 90 kilometers per hour. Now you see what happens. The turnaround reduces. The train which could have done 1,000 kilometers in a day is doing only 500 kilometers. So the capital cost per kilometer, the maintenance cost per kilometer is going high. So unless you see the unbundle the sector and increase the efficiencies. And the moment you unbundle and implement reforms, then what happens? Utilization, capacity utilization takes place. And people reduce the redundancies. Today, there is so much of flab in the railways here and there. And as I said, we have spent more than 10 lakh crores, but commensurate to that, traffic is not increasing. People are not feeling the advantage of it. Whatever we may say, but traveling public, दिन में एक वंदे भारत चलाने से नहीं हो रहा ना. Say you must run the train every hour if you have a Vande Bharat program, because any network has to be intensive and extensive. I may have extensive network, but if I don't operate the trains on that network, it keeps lying unutilized.
This is my a little bit of follow-up question. You touched about with regard to the aviation sector. You already highlighted that in aviation they got in their reforms, and they also have a regulator. Now, a few years back in the railways, also there was this entire move of some passenger services being sort of given to the others, private entities. IRCTC was also in the fray. But one of the things why my understanding is that it did not take off is that one of the complaints from whoever was interested among the private entities or even IRCTC is that in the railways you don't have a regulator. So if you go and start, doing passenger services, your regulator is the railway itself, not an independent authority that you can count upon. Your views on that in the railways itself, the need for an independent regulator.
How can you be the operator and regulator all in one? So you said Railway Board is a regulator, but then Railway Board is an operator. I was consultant when this tender came for this private operation of passenger trains. So the people took my advice. I said, look, 95% of the traffic. Today, of course, they are offering you a very small, minuscule traffic of the passenger. But if we assume that over a period of time, they will more privatize, but then also they are offering you only 5% of the traffic. 95% they are keeping to themselves. And he is operator for 95% of the traffic. And he is a regulator for 5% of the traffic. So how can you expect justice? And a commercial fellow who is investing his money into this thing. So all backed out. There were 9 people shortlisted for that private operator passenger train, including GMR, who were very keen.
True.
Because you said that we won't allow you this, no innovation we will allow. You have to run the way Indian Railway is running. So,
What's your what's your take on that? How do we move forward? Because we have to, at the end of the day, bring in efficiencies. Private sector, as and when they come in, would be one of the key players ensuring the efficiencies. So without the regulator, does even the railways, do they the railway board or the ministry even understand that it's a very important prerequisite that you bring in a regulator so that the sector gets streamlined?
we are in a democracy. And everything said and done, whatever roads you have made and their speeds have come down, this thing, but still, the railways is the lifeline. So, democracy coupled with the sensitivities and strategic importance, you may be afraid of any disruption. So, you may not like to go. When I say you, I mean policymakers, the governance people, who are responsible for the uh, governance. I have worked very closely with the ministers, so I know the fears. I know the fears. Will they face the electorate if something goes wrong and this thing. But the point is, when you made dedicated freight corridor, there was no sensitivity involved. So you could have experimented. See, you straight away jump on the private operation of passenger trains. Why not operate private operation of freight trains? Permit them on DFCC, because that is not sensitive. You already have a parallel corridor which is running. It's an additional infrastructure which you have created. Allow the trains, limit your interference to the track access charge. Like road, open access. So what we say is, Railway and road, the difference is that railway is an open access, road is an open access system. You made an infrastructure, anybody can bring in thing, and you non-discriminatory. You do not say कि सब मैं इसका ट्रक नहीं अलाउ करूंगा हिमाचल का ट्रक because there is an apple and there is a competition with Kashmir. You can't discriminate. At least the road operator cannot discriminate. Government can discriminate. Tax authorities can discriminate. But railway is a closed system. I have the terminal, logistic terminal. I make my train. But for that train to move from point A to point B, the railway will decide the route. Railway will decide the timing. It is not that I can pay the excess charge. So if they would have allowed that, okay, fine, DFCC, anybody can move. It's my perception that large number of logistic parks would have developed around the dedicated freight corridor, and they would have brought that material to that logistic park by truck or by whatever. And then they would have moved from logistic park to logistic park on the dedicated freight corridor. And it was announced in the budget that we will monetize the DFCC. But next budget, they became silent on that.
Although I think on some of the Gati Shakti cargo terminals, the DFC is getting sort of bids from private entities. So some sort of attraction, I think they've been able to get.
Gati Shakti terminal is a wonderful scheme. It has at least allowed some freedom to the people who are in the logistics business, that you can do whatever you feel like and we will not fleece you unnecessarily. Because there also there is a competition. Railway has its own goods shed, and in own goods shed they won't charge you. They don't charge themselves anything. They will charge only terminal charge. But if you make a logistic park, they will charge you freight for the portion of the track which you have made. And then they will not share anything towards the terminal charge with you. 50% sharing, this sharing, that sharing. So now Gati Shakti, at least they said, okay, fine. If you transfer ownership to me, I will maintain it. It will become so, and a lot of good response has come to the Gati Shakti. This thing. So I think that was an imaginative move. That's a very imaginative move.
Right. Sir, I will move on to a little bit away to other topic, which is now almost throughout the infrastructure sector or the transport sector, is the on sustainability, on ensuring that your entire network is green and sustainable. For the railways, 100% electrification is what they are aiming for. I understand that by the end of this financial year, I think that is the target of achieving 100% electrification. But since you have seen the decades long of experience that you have had with the railways, uh, will the 100% electrification itself be enough to, let's say, label that the railways have become net zero or green? I mean, does it limit to that, or what are the more measures?
See, let me tell you first of all, I'm not expert on this topic, but as an operator and this thing, 100% electrification is the first step towards the greening of the transport sector. Second step is today we call it payload versus tear ratio. Today, what we do is we are unnecessarily the dead weight of the wagon and dead weight of the coach is very high as compared to any other mode of transport. You compare it with the road sector, you compare shipping, or you compare air. In all these sectors, at one point of time, we were carrying in the freight almost 50% as a tear weight, only 50% payload. So we may say energy efficient per ton,
Right.
but when we see the payload, then we are not that energy efficient. So a lot of good work is being done in that direction. We have the aluminum wagons and we are increasing the tailor. So there are technical issues also because of being broad gauge. I have a limitation. The standard gauge has a different connotation. These are technical matter. But I think railway is the greenest mode of transport, and it will continue to remain that. But when we see the green this thing in totality, so construction of the project, there the railway is highly inefficient. In large scale bridges, tunneling, and earthwork, we waste a lot of carbon. So if I make an infrastructure and if I do not utilize it optimally, like we make a line and we run only one train a day, then perhaps it is against the environment. We should make the railways only where I can run at least 50% of the capacity within 5 years of the implementation of the project. You make a metro, uh, सारे शहर को आप असुविधा के लिए खेद करके रखते हैं 5 साल और उसके बाद कोई भी उसमें बैठता नहीं है. So those are the things which also are the green against the green concept, because so much of energy, carbons have been wasted in the implementation of the project. And finally, if it is not utilized, then you don't save on the carbon.
So, sir, in the beginning of our conversation, you touch upon the speed, the
Hmm.
limitation because the track network and everything needs to be upgraded. With speed also comes the responsibility of ensuring safety.
Hmm.
Now, in the last few years, last year also, we have had some really, really bad accidents. Kavach is an in-house sort of a system that we have developed and have deployed. I have come across many from the railway stakeholders where there's always a debate whether you only rely on the Kavach system or you go for the European anti-train collision system. I just really wanted to have your take on the safety part of it, where we are. Will an indigenous Kavach system alone will suffice, or there are more avenues for us?
I'll just take few seconds to give you a big picture about the safety.
Please.
The big picture about the safety is during our time, we struggled with the level crossing accidents. People were getting run over, but so a good work has been done that now we have almost eliminated all level crossings.
Yes.
People have totally forgotten about level crossing accidents, that what is happening at the level. Second thing, we had a problem of the rail fractures. The and breakage of rolling stock. Technology has eliminated those things also almost completely. Now we don't have the rail fractures and this thing. Now the biggest problem is operational failure. Why, in the garb of operational failure, with 90% of the operational failures are signaling failure. So these kind of a half-baked solutions in the signaling.
Right.
We do the panel interlocking, then we do the electronic interlocking. So we keep hybrid. The cabin is with the solid state, but outdoor is the relays. So my fellows, they keep on getting confused what is how to function and all that. There is no harm. When you see on the drawing board, Kavach may look very fine, but in absence of implementation, experience and strategies, if I do not have in-house capacity and we do not do enough research and experimentation, we do not develop human capacities, then it is better to copy and implement something which somebody has implemented for last 30 years or 20 years. And everybody is aware that what is the key parameters, that is mean time between failure and what kind of, which we, for any asset, that root cause analysis and all has already been done for the ETCS level 2. So if you adopt ETCS level 2, at least you know that if something goes wrong, what has gone wrong. In Kavach, again, they will tell you some story. Actually, this was not done in the book, this was written. So these experimental things, they are time consuming to roll out, and very risky during the learning period. And since we do not have that culture of innovation and learning as we go, it is better to adopt ETCS level 2, maybe at 50% higher cost.
And maybe if you would, I mean, if your view, maybe after that, once we all have this system in place, then gradually in a phased manner, bringing our domestic system.
ना ना वो नहीं हो सकता.
No, sir. Why?
इसी को you can indigenize this, you can become self sufficient in this, but that is not possible.
All right, sir. Sir, moving on to a next question. You referred to the many of this accident primarily, due to the fault of signaling. Now, I find it a little bit, very amusing because of the fact that in terms of technology, now in the country itself, we have so many companies who are very well into this, providing this signaling technology and all. I mean, there are many others that we could talk about. The RRTS system is a very well developed system. Obviously, when the high speed train also comes in, why is that is it a problem of in the railways the legacy systems being still there? Because when we talk about signaling, I'm quite sure our access to state of the art technology shouldn't be a problem in the market.
We have all struggled when we were in railways. We had all struggled this question. When Delhi Metro can do it, when RRTS can do it. Say, I was
Right.
the general manager Central Railway in Mumbai. So the Mumbai Suburban is the most toughest system to operate. Say, 7.5 million people daily being carried on surface. The 7.5 million is Beijing also has the same figure. Tokyo also has the same figure in the 10% plus minus. But they carry underground, carrying 75 lakh people on surface. Say
Right.
your adrenaline goes up. Say this thing. So we thought how to, and there is a demand. There is a demand further pressure ki capacity, improve the capacity, improve the capacity. In a running system, I am not able to change the signaling, lock, stock, and barrel. So what I do is I do it in bits and patches. One station is continuing on the lever frame, another station is on panel interlocking, and third station is on electronic interlocking. With this kind of arrangement, you need a tremendous leadership and commitment on the part of the maintenance staff. Else you make mistake. In RRTS and all, they are packaged, installed. So nobody knows what is happening because the system provider is there. He has to, his reputation is there. And they are implemented at 10 times the cost of the cost which Indian Railway spends on the signaling. Say average RRTS or metro system, the signaling expenditure on signaling is 2 to 1.5 to 2.5 crores per kilometer. While on Indian Railways, I don't spend more than 30 lakhs. 1.5 crore में तो हम इलेक्ट्रिफिकेशन निपटा देते हैं पूरा पर किलोमीटर में. So we are, and their system doesn't permit you to create monopoly or you install patented items on the Indian Railways. So there is always, we cannot have the latest state of art technology. We will remain technologically behind on
So,
this
sir,
account itself.
in this scenario, then what is the way out? I'm just sticking to the signaling part and the issues related to it.
The way out is there. Way out is there that you see, you can't really say 120,000 kilometers of system. You should not try to modernize and that kind of a cost if you spend which country can ill afford. But the new corridors like dedicated freight corridor, there you experiment, make a beginning, prove that is your training ground. Then bring those people. Say technology can be any good, but it is as only that much good as the people using that technology are. Today, our problem is that I don't have the people who can handle the technology.
So, sir, now last question from my side. Going ahead, in the coming years and decades, what is your assessment how the Indian Railways will, the whole network will pan out? Because at the end of the day, the airports are coming in. Other modes like RRT, especially in a sort of a city conglomerate, have also come in. How does the railway will play its role in the future?
See, we are allowing these people to come in because we are failing in serving certain sections of society. But there is no competition. Say Udan and all, that will take away only 5% of my elite this thing. Whatever we may say, uh, this rural employment scheme and all, it has affected migration a bit, and it has affected the migration. But still, in India, such a vast country and with economic disparities, surface travel is unavoidable. For the job and for social this thing, people will travel, and railway will remain the preferred mode of travel. And uh, how long will they postpone it? Reforms will come. Say, uh, I think symptoms are there already. The kind of the way accidents are taking place and things like that. People will say, okay, fine, disruption is already taking place. So let's invite disruption and unbundle and do it something. After all, after the labor pain, something we hope to good time to come. So this is the right time because we have degenerated so much that we can, and investment has come in now. Previously, if you would have uh, done the unbundling and reforms, we did not have the capacities. Now, with 10 lakh crore has already been invested, so much of 100% electrification has been achieved. The wagons, coaches, every shortages are not there now anymore. And there are intercity travel, RRTS, and airlines are there. So there is not so much of a pressure on the railways, and railway can experiment with the reforms. If at that time we did not do the private operation of passenger train because uh, it was not a honest effort. It was behind that tender. The intention was to buy some rolling stock. They were forcing the rolling stock to be purchased by the operator. Why should he's an operator? He can lease the rolling stock. Why should he own the rolling stock? The whole philosophy of business is defied, denied if you put conditions like that. So again, effort should be made, and we may start with the private operation of freight trains on the dedicated freight corridor, and of course, private operation on the passenger train. Maybe we can operate private passenger trains on the Konkan railway system because Konkan railway is already a private railway. So there you do not have so much of uh, impediments
Right.
because Konkan has the powers. Konkan has the powers to run the private trains, allot its capacity to X, Y, or Z.
Right.
They don't need any change in the Indian Railway Act or anything.
Right. And it is one of the finest example of Indian Railway,
Yeah.
project or construction.
My vision will be that we give Panvel to Madgaon eh, to an operator completely. I will not operate any train on this passenger train, you only operate.
Right. Right. So,
So
thank you, sir. It was a very delightful conversation, with you. And again, really appreciate, you taking out your time and having this conversation with ET Infra.
thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.